This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to Global Business Africa. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers. Let's kick off this business news hour with how the markets fared today. Global indices saw significant sell-offs. However, South Africa's JSE and Nigeria's all-share dodged battered investor confidence, which was dampened by that key U.S. Fed inflation gauge rising 4.9%. And of course, overall concern that central banks around the world could begin hiking interest rates soon. Let's now take a look at other news making headlines. Zimbabwe's central bank pledges to revamp its currency auction system amid forex shortages. Uganda plans to leverage on value addition to raise government revenue. And the U.S. economy posts the fastest growth in 40 years. We begin in Zimbabwe, where the central bank there has agreed to refine the foreign currency auction system. The decision is in line with proposals from business leaders who want allocated funds paid out quicker and a more market-determined exchange rate to prevail. Farai Mokotuya has the latest on this report from Harare.
In 2021, the weekly foreign currency auction disbursed more than $1.7 billion, about a third of Zimbabwe's import bill, to some 6,000 beneficiaries. The system is credited with improving foreign currency allocation, though some would want the central bank to have less involvement.
There are schools of thought which say that we don't need the Dutch auction. We need to have currency floating, giving back the responsibility to the banks and ensuring that they, through necessary and related legislation, manage their clients in terms of who has got export proceeds, who needs to import, and that sort of thing.
The auction has faced challenges including payment backlogs and failure to narrow the gap between the official and parallel market exchange rates, creating arbitrage opportunities and shortchanging key market participants.
Exporters are bringing in money, part of which is now used to fund the auction system, and it exposes them to stability issues or instability issues, if I may say, because if you then give back 40% of the export proceeds, depending on sector, at official rate, and on the other hand, their costs are at parallel market, they are still not going to be happy to, the perception that they're not getting real value.
The central bank has agreed to address the instability, but is likely to resist calls to devalue the local currency. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe insists that it will not focus on developments on the parallel market, nor will it try to match the exchange rate there. A member of the bank's Monetary Policy Committee said trying to do so would be similar to attempting to chase the wind. Monetary authorities say they will avail more foreign currency onto the auction to shore up the local unit.
The strategy is to strengthen the Zim dollar in making foreign currency, which is available in the economy, more accessible to the rest of the economy or to the ordinary person in the economy. Yes, and therefore make the alternative market less relevant.
Since August last year, ordinary citizens have been allowed to buy $50 per week from banks and forex bureaus at the official exchange rate. Farai Mokotuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Well, taking a look at news coming out of Nigeria, the International Monetary Fund has stuck to its forecast that Nigeria's economy will grow by 2.7% this year. It has, however, raised its forecast for 2023 to 2.7 from the 2.6 it projected last October. The new GDP growth forecast for Nigeria was contained in the Washington-based lender's January World Economic Outlook report. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam takes a closer look at that report.
Nigeria's economy endured the pandemic-induced recession in 2020. Driven by the non-oil sector, it has recorded 4 quarters of consecutive growth after emerging from recession. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has now predicted a 2.7% growth rate in 2022 for Nigeria, 0.1% higher than its 2.6% forecast in October last year.
This optimism are all based on positive projections of oil production and oil price volumes over the next 3 years. It's expected that the price of crude will remain over $70. Now it's over $80, but it will remain that high for the next 3 years. So then the second optimism is based on the aggressive push by government to raise revenue. They have this strategic revenue initiative where they are going all out for the agencies to paying their money to the treasury. Don't forget that government revenue, about 50% of government revenue is coming from crude, and 80% of our forex is also coming from crude.
While economic watchers laud this slight upgraded growth revised by the IMF, they urge government to ensure that the projected growth be reflected in the lives of citizens.
When GDP growth rate is mentioned, it's only it's not a collective in most cases. It's just attached to sectoral contribution. But when government put right policies on ground, especially the intervention, especially government commitment in infrastructure, there is possibility that it's going to translate to collective prosperity where all the classes, the social classes, will benefit.
The IMF projection is in contrast to that of the World Bank, which anticipates slower growth rate. And experts explained possible reasons behind this contrast.
IMF is making a lot of measurement that include our sources of financing, which borrowing is one. And when you have high borrowing, definitely you are expecting that borrowing to translate to physical development and economy. But the World Bank is using certain constraints. They don't look at mostly the output of our own investment outside the economy.
Economists recommend strategic planning and strong monetary policies to propel and sustain the growth. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Well, staying with that January World Economic Outlook report, the IMF also upgraded Egypt's GDP growth by 0.4% in 2022 to 5.6%. The lender noted that Egypt managed to handle the setback caused by COVID-19 well compared to oil-imported countries. From Cairo, here's Yasser Kim with the details.
Despite downgrading the global and regional economic growth this year, the International Monetary Fund has upgraded Egypt's growth as the lender said stronger data showed the country's economic performance had grown at a faster rate than expected in the 2020-2021 fiscal year. The North African country has benefited from robust consumption demand, growing
especially after the coronavirus pandemic led to high rates of digital transformation. Secondly, our exports. For the first time in Egypt's history, we exceeded exports of $31 billion. Also, investments in agriculture pushed up agricultural exports. SMEs also did well. The state is convinced that a strong economy is based on well-established small and medium enterprises and therefore is encouraging SMEs to flourish.
Aggressive economic reforms launched in 2016 have created a diversified and resilient economy that helped to weather the COVID-induced fallout. The North African nation was one of a handful of countries worldwide to post positive growth rates in 2020.
The critical test is to maintain an upward trend amidst continued challenges like the COVID-19 and its variants, as well as the supply chain disruptions and commodity shortages.
There is a gradual recovery in important sectors, such as oil and gas, as well as tourism. But success depends on how the government is facing the obstacles ahead.
The main challenge is the coronavirus. It remains a global crisis that we don't know when it will end. We're trying to deal with it. At first, there were shocks from this crisis. Now we're adjusting accordingly, and the government is supporting every sector and segment of the society with various initiatives to survive this crisis.
The World Bank and the IMF reports are confident that if Egypt maintains performances of the last year, it will confidently post growth rates that could hit 7% from the current 3.5% by 2025. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
We head on over back to West Africa, where food and beverage giant Nestle says that it will offer cocoa farmers and their families in Cote d'Ivoire cash incentives that aim to reduce child labor. The program plans to spend $1.4 billion by 2030. The announcement comes as the chocolate industry faces growing scrutiny over the problem of child labor. Nestle says that it will begin paying cocoa farmers cash if they send their children to school rather than out to tend crops. The prevalence of child labor in cocoa production in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana increased 14 percentage points in the decade through 2019. That's according to a survey conducted by the University of Chicago. Nestle says its latest initiative is part of a push to purchase all its cocoa through a fully traceable, directly sourced supply chain by the year 2025. Let's now take a look at your corporate headlines. South Africa's largest supermarket chain, ShopRite, reported double-digit growth in the sales for the 6 months to end January. That's great news for the retail giant, which pulled back on most of its Africa expansion, which saw it close operations in Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, and Madagascar. ShopRite reported a 10% jump in sales, despite that fallout South Africa experienced from last year's massive civil unrest, which affected 231 of ShopRite stores. And not forgetting the impact of the country's stringent COVID-19 lockdown restrictions. Meanwhile, South Africa's Massmart Group total sales fell for the year ended 26 December 2021. The group attributed the drop to pandemic-related liquor trading restrictions, looting, and global supply chain shortages. Massmart's total group sales came in at $5.5 billion in the 52-week period, which ended December the 26th of last year. That's a drop of 1.9% from a year ago. Well, the East African Breweries Limited says its net profit more than doubled in the 6 months to December. The performance came on the back of higher alcohol sales as COVID-19 restrictions eased and bars reopened. The brewery's net earnings jumped 130% to nearly $77 million. That's from the $33 million booked in a similar period back in 2020. And finally, Apple sales soared in the key Christmas shopping season despite constraints due to global shortage of microchips. Sales at the iPhone giant rose 11% to a record $123.9 billion in the October to December period, beating forecasts. Apple's market value briefly hit the $3 trillion milestone in early January, though its share price has slipped more recently amid weeks of market turmoil. And those were your corporate headlines. Let's now take a short break and return. More news coming up in global business, including Uganda plans to leverage on value addition to raise government revenues. And the UAE lifts the Kenyan flight ban over COVID-19 testing protocols.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global business, only on CGTN.
So this is it. I'm just about to be shot.
The little tents here, bottles are being thrown as they do so.
There are about 3 critical bridges here in Malawi. That's one of them. We're going to cross that bridge.
As you can see behind me, police forces
who are replying with gas. Gas just came in.
Tear gas, so it's all begun now.
Divisions leading the charge into West Mosul have brought us here.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
This is where most of the fighting has been concentrated.
Is the front line now after 9 days of fighting?
We're about 2 to 3 kilometers from
within
the front
clear
line.
view of this front line position.
Welcome back to Global Business. Well, Uganda wants to curb its borrowing and boost exports in the meat and dairy sectors as the country lifts out of COVID-19. President Yoweri Museveni says he wants to expand the country's trade. Uganda used to sell milk to Kenya, but Kenya restricted sales in 2019. Uganda's milk exports are now 50% of what they used to be before the coronavirus curbs. Museveni also plans to add value to other agricultural exports, such as coffee, which has long been one of Uganda's main foreign exchange earners. Uganda's trade push follows several years of reduced lending, and as programs designed to offer relief from COVID-19-induced slumps start to expire.
Uganda can do much better without borrowing, in my opinion, especially borrowing for what they call budget support, balance of payment support. We don't think that is good borrowing. But we shall manage, because now the economy has been growing at like roughly 4% without tourism, without transport fully, without the hotels. Now they are opening up, so the economy will resume fast growth.
Well, elsewhere, the United Arab Emirates has lifted the ban on all passenger flights to and from Kenya. Flights from Kenya to Dubai are expected to resume on Saturday, January the 29th. The UAE has issued new directives in line with the overhaul of the suspension. Passengers will be required to present a negative COVID-19 rapid test certificate with a QR code for the test performed within 6 hours to departure. They will also be required to undergo a complete PCR test upon arrival. UAE barred entry of flights from Kenya on December the 20th after establishing that travelers from Nairobi were testing positive for COVID-19 on arrival despite presenting negative test results. The ban did not affect cargo flights by carriers like Kenya Airways and Emirates Airlines. Well, to Tunisia now, where more than a week after authorities imposed a night curfew across the country, thousands of shop owners in the capital are decrying the disastrous impact of the restrictions. The government, however, maintains the night curfew is key to curbing the spread of the Omicron variant. Adnan Shawashi reports from Tunis.
Investors and members of the Tunis Chamber of Commerce are warning that jobs are at risk as the health crisis persists. Tunisian shoppers have been deserting the main shopping streets since the new measures were imposed, and many boutiques and businesses are shutting down indefinitely.
We are tired of COVID measures. We are losing clients, money, and plunging into debt. Who is going to pay the rents and bills of thousands of shops? How could workers get their salaries at the end of the month? The state imposes the curfew at night and limits mobility during the day, but does not help businesses. We are fed up with this situation.
Many people believe that the 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. night curfew forces businesses to close the door early and affects economic activity. Yet some Tunisians are in favor of the strict preventive measures to curb the spread of the pandemic.
Most shopping streets are empty as if we are in the middle of a lockdown. The economic situation is difficult. Many people have lost their jobs and cannot put food on the table. They will die of hunger or live with depression if they can't work.
The curfew is necessary. The health situation is getting worse with the spread of the new variant. We must all make sacrifices to save lives. It's difficult to choose between the economic and health situation.
The health department announced that the night curfew contributes to reducing the number of infections in the country. Accordingly, this measure discourages people from gathering at bars, restaurants and cafes.
The nighttime curfew doesn't make sense. It's useless. Does coronavirus circulate at night and sleep in the morning? No, it's everywhere. We need to cope with the pandemic, work and respect preventative measures. The economy will not recover if we don't work.
In 2021, the Tunisian government launched a digital platform to support thousands of businesses and to reduce the negative repercussions of the pandemic. A survey conducted last year by the National Organization of Entrepreneurs revealed that 93% of entrepreneurs and people exercising liberal professions did not receive any financial support from the government during the COVID-19 pandemic. Tunisian businesses have not recovered from the first and the second lockdowns, as well as the 4 waves of the pandemic. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, looking good is big business around the world. The global beauty industry is valued at around $511 billion and is projected to increase to $716 billion by 2025. Part of that industry are anti-aging and related products, which were valued at around $58.5 billion back in 2020 and forecasted to reach a whopping $88.3 billion by 2026. Earlier on, we spoke with one entrepreneur from South Africa whose business is taking advantage of this massive market. Karen Kraus is the founding CEO of Eye Slices, a product that aims to reduce eye wrinkles and puffiness, but has also delved into the medical industry.
So I first saw a gap in the market way back in the late 90s. There was nothing on the market that would be a quick lifestyle, quick fix product for puffiness, dark circles, tiredness, redness, and wrinkles. You had your general anti-aging creams that, there were mountains of, but there was no quick lifestyle product. And I decided I would embark on the journey of developing one that really works.
And that whole journey was a 10-year journey. Just speak to us real briefly about how you developed that technology.
So I went looking for a technology to underpin my invention or my idea, because I understood that technology is an amazing enabler. It allows you to add real value to the consumer and also differentiate your product on the market. I had never been in the tech or innovation development space, so I had no idea it would take a good 10 years to develop the technology and the globally unique manufacturing process that underpins the manufacturing of the technology. So what we have is a patented cryogel polymer technology. It's a dermal delivery system that slowly releases active ingredients into the skin and gives you that kind of quick fix, whether it's an eye treatment pad or a face mask for anti-aging, or like now we're embarking on the journey of in the medical industry for burns and wounds and diabetic ulcers and surgical wounds, which is really exciting, but a long journey indeed.
Karen, I want to speak a little bit more about what you've just mentioned, because among the top discussions that we've been hearing about how businesses in Africa can add value to their products and therefore become more competitive on the global market, there's been this call for more innovation and development of technology on the continent. From your own company's experience, Karen, what do you believe other businesses could maybe learn from how innovation and ongoing development of technology at Eye Slices could enable them to differentiate their businesses, as you've mentioned, in the marketplace?
So my encouragement would be the tech and innovation development space is definitely a longer, more arduous journey and definitely requires a lot more financial resources and other resources, but it is so worth the journey. If an entrepreneur like me, who had no experience in the space, no science degree, I have a business degree, could embark on an arduous scientific innovation journey, and when I started I had nothing, and find the resources along the way and eventually get there, that means anybody can do it. And it is so worth the journey, because it is technology and innovation that we need to solve the problems that are unique to Africa and the African continent. So we need to be innovating for the African continent from within Africa, as opposed to just using technologies from the rest of the world that already exist.
On the back of what you've just shared, Karen, in prior discussions with me, you've mentioned the importance of reinventing for the future and essentially changing world economies and current trends. And I think that was one of the things that was really top of the agenda at the World Economic Forum for 2022. Just speak to us on a practical level. What do you mean by that when you speak about reinventing for the future and essentially changing world economies and current trends?
Absolutely. So if you look at our space that we're moving into with the medical industry, there are so many complex products trying to solve things like slow wound healing or slow healing wounds, biofilm, those leg ulcers and diabetic ulcers that just don't heal. And people have gone and invented all sorts of machinery and very complex ways to solve it. Our innovation, as much as it is globally unique and took over a decade to develop, it's very simple. And we've combined other technologies with our technology to create something so simple for the consumer to use. It, for example, reduces hospital time. It takes away the need for nurses and highly paid specialists that need to be involved. It allows the consumer to own their own healing journey and is incredibly affordable, especially for the African continent. And so we need to be always approaching things from the consumer perspective, looking at the global trends, the way that the world has radically shifted even now in the last 2 years, and find simple yet effective and affordable innovations for the consumer. And we need to start innovating for the poor. Nobody thinks about the poor when they're innovating. We think about those who have got resources, the middle to higher income brackets, which is where most of the pharmaceutical industry plays, unfortunately, because they need to pay back all of their investment. But there's a massive gap to be innovating for the poor, and that's what we're looking at.
Well, we shift focus now to Burkina Faso, where the decision by ECOWAS to suspend the country over the recent military coup that overthrew President Roch Kabore has sparked different reactions in the capital. As Ezra Cannon reports from Ouagadougou, carriers and traders are worried about the possible impact of further ECOWAS sanctions could have on their respective sectors.
The decision by ECOWAS to suspend Burkina Faso over the recent military coup that overthrew President Roch Kabore has sparked different reactions in the West African nation. In Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso's capital, carriers and traders have expressed their views on the possible impact that ECOWAS sanctions could have on their respective sectors.
We are not afraid of the sanctions of ECOWAS because we prefer these sanctions to the insecurity that has prevailed in our country for years, and that kills our valiant soldiers and parents. It is better to close the transportation sector than to see its people die every day.
We fear the ECOWAS sanctions because without food, how can we survive? If countries close their borders because of the ECOWAS sanctions, the famine that is already raging here will decimate us.
The virtual summit, which lasted about 3 hours, decided to send a mission to Ouagadougou on Saturday by the Chief of Staff of the ECOWAS armies, which will be followed on Monday by a ministerial mission. In his first speech since taking power on Monday, Burkina Faso new military leader, Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba, said on Thursday evening on national television that his country needs its partner now more than ever. Desiree Canon, CGTN, Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso.
Well, let's now take a short break and return. Here's what's coming up. The U.S. economy posts the fastest growth in 40 years. And technology ushers change in the saving culture in Kenya. More in our tech and innovation slot tonight.
Change is on the horizon. Through the shifting of time, Africa's emerging tech landscape is creating new channels.
There's a hunger for local African content globally.
Shaped by innovation, carved out by a new generation of digital entrepreneurs, sculpted by a mobile revolution, and trickling down to the most remote corners of the continent. TechSpot is seeking out the new concepts in technology, disrupting Africa's traditional sectors.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads.
we celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, let's now recap on the top news stories for the hour. West African leaders have suspended Burkina Faso from the regional bloc ECOWAS. The leaders met virtually on Friday to discuss developments in Burkina Faso. On Monday, the military forced President Roch Kabore to resign and suspend the constitution. The international community, alongside ECOWAS, have condemned the military takeover. Over in the Sudan, the Civil Forces Association and several other groups have left the Forces of Freedom and Change. The umbrella civil movement has seen several groups leaving it due to emerging differences between them. The recent turn of events has hampered efforts by the United Nations to initiate a dialogue between all Sudanese stakeholders to help resolve the country's political crisis. And over in Mozambique, the country is still reeling from the impact of Tropical Storm Anna, which passed over Madagascar last Saturday and made landfall in Mozambique on Monday. At least 40 people were killed as intense rains caused landslides and washed away buildings. Many homes were flooded and a bridge in the Mozambican city of Tete was destroyed. Authorities have declared a state of disaster. And those were our top stories for the hour. Well, the U.S. economy grew at a much better than expected pace to end 2021. It posted the fastest expansion for nearly 40 years after one of the steepest contractions ever when COVID-19 struck in 2020. But as Owen Ferrickler reports, the U.S. now has to juggle slower growth forecasts for the year with inflation at historic highs.
It's been beset by supply chain snags, but Tesla made record profits last year, a sign for some of a healthy economy backed up by the latest data. The US economy expanded by 5.7% in 2021, roaring back to life a year after COVID-19 inflicted one of the steepest contractions on record. US stock markets also liked the number, but another rising figure is arguably more pressing right now.
The US appears to be heading back to the 1980s right now, posting the highest economic growth since 1984, but it's also grappling with the highest inflation since 1982.
But unemployment is almost back at pre-pandemic lows, so these numbers help the Federal Reserve's case for raising its main interest rate.
I think there's quite a bit of room to raise interest rates without threatening the labor market. This is, by so many measures, a historically tight labor market. Record levels of job openings, of quits. Wages are moving up at the highest pace they have in decades.
Even so, there were signs of that impressive growth tailing off towards the end of last year amid supply chain problems and the onset of the Delta and Omicron variants. And the International Monetary Fund this week downgraded its 2022 growth forecast for major economies, including the US, over inflation and concerns about the pandemic's continued impact. Owen Fairclough, CGTN, Washington.
At a symposium on the state of China's economy in Beijing on Thursday, economic experts from the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference shared findings suggesting that the country still has growth advantages, despite doubts over its ability to maintain growth in the coming years. Yang Jingxi has that report.
China achieved an annual GDP growth of 8.1% in 2021, despite the COVID-19 pandemic and global economic pressures. Experts at a symposium in Beijing said that it's notable that the country's per capita GDP reached $12,500, which is close to high-income country standards.
But behind those figures lie challenges to growth.
China's structural potentials used to lie in real estate development, infrastructure, and foreign trade. But the growth of these sectors has weakened in the past few years.
Experts say the housing industry, which was deemed a pillar for China's growth in the past several decades, will move away from high speed towards high quality development.
Building new homes or tearing down dilapidated houses and building new ones have been profitable for both local governments and developers. But in the past few years, the government has been channeling more and more money into renovating apartment blocks built over the past half-decade. These projects need investments, but have not been paid much attention to.
Economist Lin Yifu says there's a hypothesis that an economy's normal annual growth is about 3 to 4%. Some speculate that China's growth will gradually be lowered into that trend, with factors such as an older population weighing it down further. But Lin doesn't see it that way.
A developing country, in the catching up process, there is something called the latecomers advantages in their technological innovation, in their industrial upgrading.
Economist Liu Shijin says the potential for China's continued growth in the next decade lie in 3 areas.
According to our research, the priority is building metropolitan circles and city clusters. Also, we need to address 3 shortfalls, which are that the efficiency of basic industries are not high enough, the middle income group is not big enough, and we're still lagging behind in basic research. Finally, we should pursue a digital economy and green development.
Experts at the symposium reached a consensus that growth will pick up in China and the country will be able to maintain mid to high-speed growth in the years to come. Yang Chengxi, CGTN, Beijing.
Well, up next is Uche Okoronkwo with the latest on our innovation slot, TechSpot.
Hi there and welcome to TechSpot, where we sniff out the groundbreaking new concepts in technology disrupting traditional sectors. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, and this week we'll show you how digitization is finding its way into long-established savings and credit cultures in Africa. Savings and credit cooperative societies have been around for millions of years, and here in Africa, with over 300 million of the population still remaining unbanked, many rely on these structures for years to access fair loans and, of course, as a safety net. So it's no surprise that it was just a matter of time before they would be roped into Africa's digital revolution. Well, Kenyan Fintech startup Quara has now built a digital banking platform designed to turn traditional savings cooperatives into modern digital banks. From the bustling commercial hubs to the green and serene rural farms, Africa's cities and towns embody the struggles of low-income living and the realities of the underbanked. It is easy to see the influential role that cooperative movements play in these communities. They are a safe haven for rainy day funds, the financial boost needed to start a business, pay school fees, or even build a home. And here's why. In communities where financial services are considered too expensive or out of reach, savings and credit cooperative societies, or SACCOs, act as a sort of self-help organization, where like-minded individuals who share a common bond, such as working for the same employer, belonging to the same church or social fraternity, or living in the same community, pull together their savings and provide loans to members at reasonable rates. While SACCOs were initially created to only provide credit facilities to its members, they have evolved by diversifying their product offerings. Today, they also offer investment opportunities, agricultural facilities for farmers, create employment and housing solutions. As shareholders, members also stand to gain from annual dividends on profits made throughout the year. Now, it may sound just like a typical bank, but SACCOs are generally owned by their members, and because they're not-for-profit organizations, they work in their best interests. As a result, they offer a great return on investment, while also providing emergency loans at cheaper rates compared to other financial institutions. They also provide limited liability to personal assets and investment opportunities in the form of different development projects, such as land and homes. Now, we all know that technology is playing a huge role in bringing the unbanked into the fray today. But interestingly, despite the importance of SACCOs to local communities, they have remained mostly excluded. Some say that's because they heavily rely on manual and analog systems of operation. Also, because of their informal nature, they sometimes lack proper regulation, vetting, and effective means of fraud detection. Well, Kenyan-based Fintech, Quara, is now attempting to change that. What it offers is a management platform that improves efficiency and automation at the staff level, and a neobank-style mobile banking app for end clients.
We spent enough time at the SACCOs at the beginning that, you know, we'd get questions like, "Are you journalists? Why are you so interested in how we work?" And we would explain that it would be unlikely that we succeed if we don't get as deeply as possible into the whys, your pain points, any challenges you have. Our platform is actually co-developed with the SACCO sector. We don't release a feature blindly, even if we have the idea of what could maybe make life easier for the SACCO. We immediately engage either the staff or the members and start to get a sense of what they think about how we want to solve it.
An app like Quara has been able to revolutionize the way SACCOs operate. For example, the process of reviewing a member application, verifying it, and approving it would normally take 7 days, and that's on a good day. Well, Quara has been able to automate that down to about 15 minutes.
On the one hand, there's things about how the SACCO operates that are, I think, other financial institutions should borrow, right? Like they already do a few things really, really well. And those we wanted to help shine. Digitizing them does make them better, but we are not content with just, if you did step 1, 2, 3 on paper, do step 1, 2, 3 online. It's like, okay, what if there's actually one step to do it? And that allows you in the end to spend more time and more resource on something that can't be digitized.
Please scroll down till this section.
Quara says it has managed to bring on 30 cooperative clients across Kenya, South Africa and the Philippines, serving more than 50,000 members. Its biggest market today is here in Kenya, which is home to more than 15,000 registered SACCOs with over 10 million members. And collectively, they control savings of more than $4 billion and have an asset base of about $6.5 billion. And the Karura Community SACCO is one of many now looking to Quara to not only enhance their delivery of services, but to also grow, become more investable and safer.
Have you been able to do your reconciliations? Digitizing is pretty new, especially in SACCOs. In other industries, it's been happening, especially in banks. But in SACCOs it's still pretty new. And a few SACCOs have started to embrace, and Karura Community SACCO is one of them. Because all we are looking at is to make sure that the services we are offering is reliable and very, very convenient. Our products like Solution Loan, which is supposed to be immediate. But in many cases, because of the manual operation, members will receive that money after a day or two. But as we digitize our services, then that service becomes immediately.
The Karura Community SACCO serves members like Anne, a cook at a local church. Like many in her generation and income base, a SACCO is her only real access to financing. Anne embodies the typical SACCO member. one who is not accustomed to interacting with sophisticated digital financial products.
Watu wengi wajoin sako, inasaidia sana sana.
I would encourage people to join SACCOs because they really help a lot, and I am a testament to that. I use my SACCO to take loans for school fees and to invest in some farmland. My SACCO usually meets yearly, but if I want a loan today, I check my account for how much I have saved from my monthly deposits. I do the necessary calculations and then I request a loan. Once I have paid off that loan, I wait for my savings to reach a certain level and request another loan, which I use to pay school fees.
What the Quara team has done is to create crisp and simple design principles, such as USSD codes, to make it easier to deliver the SACCO's products via mobile services to the lower income and less tech-savvy SACCO members.
We have a team, and that's our customer success team, and basically their main role is to just ensure that all our SACCOs are okay, that they are utilizing the platform, and if they have any challenges or any requests, any questions, they're able to reach out to us. We have a chat bot on our website where someone will always be there to attend to you, and we have different levels of escalating issues. So that's one thing I'd say that we ensure works well for us.
Quara is also attracting a new kind of SACCO member. Now, research has shown that very few under 30 are members of a SACCO, especially in an age when the workplace is getting less and less informal.
The average age group of their SACCO would be between 50 to 60. So there's a huge gap in terms of onboarding new members who are, I'd say, a more active and working generation. So that's some of the ideas that we use when approaching these SACCOs, and just advise them that they need something that's more digital, more light, more affordable for continuity of the SACCO. Because 10 years from now, when all of their members go to retire, it will be painful for the SACCO in terms of getting deposits, and in terms, it can lead to closure in the long run.
Younger generations, such as Hope, are more likely to galvanize digital loan apps where interest rates and the risk of falling into debt are now higher. But the safety and benefits of joining a SACCO and the ease of using a digital app is now piquing their interest.
First one was to get dividends at the end of the year, and I also love saving. Saving is my culture, but I was saving at home, but then there's no benefit of just keeping the money at home. So now I moved to a SACCO. I track my savings. That is the most important one. And then I get to know how much dividends I'll earn at the end of the year. And that keeps me motivated to store much more money inside the SACCO. Yeah, SACCO today is very, very easy and simple. Since you have the app, you don't really have to come to the SACCO every single time you want to deposit your money. You can simply deposit using any mobile banking app. Then you will see your money reflect in the app. It's called Quara for the SACCO. Yeah, you'll get to see your deposits, your shares, and your loans. You can actually borrow loans from the app.
Creating a digital solution for SACCOs, which already have an established working culture and are largely community and member focused, is not as easy as it seems.
There was an initial investment of time and resources over the course of the first year. I would say a mix of that user research for several months, and then starting the actual building, and considering we're building core banking infrastructure, there were not going to be any compromises in the robustness and the stability of the platform and so on. So it took us, what I would say is a little bit longer than your classic, maybe very light MVP startup that can come out of the gate in like a month or two. We took a fair amount of time to release the first version. But by the time we released it, it was already something that could automate the operations of a small SACCO. And that's what we went into the market with. And when we showed that we could, first of all, augment the existing workflows that were there, we were not going and saying, change everything how you're doing it. It's just, here's a tool that works alongside what you're doing anyway. with the added advantage that it becomes easier to do repeatable things. It becomes faster to sort of spot any areas of issues. Then that was, in a way, you would say, the hook.
The firm is now expanding its offerings to other emerging markets such as Indonesia, where microfinance, saving groups and non-bank financial institutions have long played a critical role in bringing crucial financial services to the underserved. Homegrown digital financial solutions such as Quora have become one of the key catalysts to Africa's growth story. And that's because they are making huge strides towards not only closing the gap between the banked and the unbanked, but also solving the obstacle that is access to financing and bridging domestic and cross-border remittances. While recent reports prove that they are not letting up, research shows that there will be further positive momentum in this regard.
A 2021 report on the state of finance apps by analytics firm AppsFlyer revealed just how much fintech apps are in high demand. On a global scale, the segment saw a 132% leap in downloads in the last 2 years. In sub-Saharan Africa, installs climbed 160%, in Nigeria 100%, in Kenya and 52% in South Africa. Fintech apps are estimated to have spent $3 billion on generating installs in 2020, and 2021 is heading for a record with no less than $1.2 billion spent in the first quarter alone. Research by Disrupt Africa also revealed that African fintechs have grown by 89.4% between 2017 and 2021. Today, there are more than 570 startups on the continent. Many of these fintechs are mobile-based, reflecting the number of fintech apps Africans use each day. In markets like Nigeria, AppsFlyer's data show that over 40% of these installs were channeled towards loans, while 35% and 20% went to financial services and investments, respectively.
What perhaps has been the biggest catalyst to this growth is the COVID-19 pandemic, which researchers say led to a shift in mindset even for those that have been slow to adapt. The rapid adoption of financial technology, in emerging markets especially, was simply because finance apps helped millions of consumers and businesses remain connected in the last 2 years. According to AppsFlyer's regional VP, Daniel, this trend is likely to continue.
We released our report for Africa, revealing that there was a 41% in-app installs during 2020. That's a massive amount of number, but that is maybe surprising, but not that surprising. Eventually, we were all sitting at home downloading apps. We see a big boost in the financial apps. We see a big boost uplift in gaming apps. But the most interesting thing actually happened in Q3. Not only that people were happy to download more apps, but in the Q3, they were also more willing to do a purchase inside the app. So it's not just about downloading an app, it's also about doing an action after the download. And when we talk about an action, we're talking about a purchase. So people are not, in the past, some people were maybe more concerned about purchasing through the app. Is this secure enough or not? We see that this change in the mindset happened drastically in Q3 2020. Financial apps or the e-commerce apps, why they are growing so much in sub-Saharan Africa, why they are growing so much in other developing regions, because once again, they're coming to solve a problem. Not everybody is able to get a branch, to open a bank account, to send money to a family member and stuff like this. And these applications are coming to solve that, and they are 1 second away from us in our smartphones. So this is why they are growing so drastically.
And that's where we'll leave it on this edition of TechSpot.
Let's now take another quick look at the markets. It was a mixed day for commodities. Precious metals taking quite a hit in trade. Oil continuing its climb past $90, raising the question of Could we see it hit the $100 market barrel even sooner than analysts expect? Well, let's not take a short break and return. We're not taking a short break. We're going to go straight to South Africa, where 5 stars is usually the most a luxury hotel can get. A notable exception being a famed Dubai skyscraper that gave itself 7 stars. But in South Africa's city of Cape Town, one luxury hotel is giving its canine guests such pampering that owners say deserves 6 stars.
At Super Wolf Hotel, it's a normal day, a day just like any other.
I would choose all of them, but I will have to just go with Stevie. Stevie's fun. Stevie likes me a lot. Stevie, when he sees me, he goes crazy. So I adopted that. So yeah, he's one of my best.
Situated near the colorful houses of the Bokap district, the 6-star luxury hotel for dogs is surrounded by hipster cafes, art galleries and restaurants. Inside, canine guests hang out together or at an upper class have a private presidential suite. These are decked out with the Baroque chandeliers and exquisite wallpapers with canine portraits in 4 gilt frames on the walls. Should the dogs feel like a sundowner later, drinks are available in little bottles of champors, a cocktail of water with a dash of rose petal and South Africa's famous rooibos tea.
Dogs are man's best friend for a reason, but other than that, they come from spaces where that's their regular day-to-day treatment, and I think more so now than ever, dogs are people's children, so they don't want to just be left at home to do nothing. They come here and get well spoilt, and just to make sure that at the end of the day they're knackered and happy when they go home.
South Africa's strict lockdown at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic depressed demand for dog hotels as thousands worked from home. But with the economy reopening, owners are returning to the office and many dogs are now experiencing separation anxiety. But at Super Wolf, there's a range of therapies for suffering hounds, from gemstones therapy to Reiki, a Japanese relaxation technique.
We've got our customized Super Wolf lounges, which are absolutely delightful for the doggos. They really love sharing that space as a sleeping zone. Of course, we've got our handlers and staff on duty 24/7 to make sure that there's never ever a moment that a dog is being left unattended.
With dogs a divisive topic in South Africa, where they were used by apartheid police to crack down on protesters during the liberation struggle, there are those who have questioned luxury dog hotels for the kind of treatment they argue many people in poverty-stricken South Africa could only dream of. Najma Abdirizak, CGTN.
Well, finally, in the Forex market, currencies we track here all pretty much flat against the dollar. The naira and shilling were slightly stronger. The rest of the currencies on the board were slightly weaker. But as mentioned, the changes were minuscule overall. And that was a quick look at the markets. That's it for this edition of Global Business. Remember that you can send your feedback to contacts on the screen and follow us on our digital media platforms. From me, Hannah Viviers, and the rest of the Global Business team, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next time.